Welcome to the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. My name is Lauren Wells, here with my co-host, Chris Seveney. We're committed to providing you with the knowledge required to build wealth through real estate investing. Tired of consuming content about real estate? Stuck in analysis paralysis? Ready to do your first deal? As a member of our community, you will learn how to go from consuming content to taking that first step into the world of real estate investing. Our show is not about getting rich quick, but about providing you with the knowledge you need to take action. Join us as we speak with experienced investors who share action tips on how to escape the corporate world, start a thriving side hustle in the world of real estate, and go beyond your W-2 or 401k.
Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. I am your host, Chris Seveney, where we talk about demystifying the process of wealth creation one episode at a time. Today, I have a really interesting topic that I want to share with people from my experiences over the last 2 years. And this is how to create a crowdfunding campaign to raise money, and specifically how I created my Regulation A+ offering. So if you ever wondered what goes into crafting such an offering, or if you're looking to understand the intricacies of navigating these regulations, you are in the right place. So make sure to stay tuned today and listen. So let's get started on this. So first, I want to talk about what is crowdfunding and what is a Regulation A offering. Because people hear a lot of terms about crowdfunding. People heard of GoFundMe and some of these other sites, which those are really for a specific, immediate emergency need. But true crowdfunding in real estate is raising money from other people to invest in a certain real estate deal offering fund that you have. Now, I will start out by saying you should not be raising money from others until you have significant experience. And that's just the caveat I always start with. Let's talk about first, what is a Regulation A+ offering? Now, there's other types of offerings out there that I'll kind of compare each one. So people may have heard of a syndication or Regulation D offering, which has a 506B as in boy, a 506C as in cat. And in a 506B offering, you file a form with the SEC saying you're filing an exemption. You can't advertise anything for this offering, but you can accept up to 35 non-accredited investors and accredited investors. Most people usually go 506C route. And what that is you cannot accept those non-accredited investors, only accredited. Now, I expect people, should Google what a accredited versus non-accredited is. High level, it's somebody who either individually makes $200,000 a year or $300,000 combined, or has a net worth of over $1 million is what is termed as accredited. Just talked about kind of a 506B, 506C. Regulation A+ takes it to a whole nother level. It's like you combine both of those because you can advertise and you can accept non-accredited investors. The big difference is you actually don't file just a simple form to the SEC saying you're exempted. You actually have to get qualified. So you have to provide them your offering circular that they will review, comment on, make sure it meets their regulations and guidelines. And then once it does, then you get qualified and you can go out and raise money. So you can see why this is attractive to sponsors. It's not only can you raise up to $75 million per year in these types of offerings, but you have all those non-accredited investors, which is the majority of this country, who can invest in your offering. So I kind of just want to talk about that Regulation A and a little bit of the comparison between. So let's talk about the whole process of how to even put one of these together. And how did I start? So I started with the Regulation A offering first by watching a ton of videos online. And one of the things that I noticed was the players in this space. Many of the players you saw from conference and webinar to conference and webinar, it was always the same, a lot of the same people. So I took down a lot of information and I started reaching out and talking to these people. Said, hey, I'm interested in starting this up. What don't I know, or where should I start and what could I do? And early on, a broker dealer company called Dalmore, and Aton, who runs Dalmore, got to give him so much recognition because he gave me so much information on things to look out for, things to do. And, took that information. And for those that do know me, I'm the type of person who does a ton of research. So then I started going on to the SEC's website, which for some reason is called Edgar. I don't know why. And I started searching and I started reading a lot of other offerings. And this is painful, to say the least. But I was looking at what are others doing? What is the competition doing? And how are these structured? Not only that, but because all this information is public, you also get to see who everyone is using for their team. So when you think about the broker dealer, in this instance, being the point guard, if you're on a basketball team, who is the center, which might be that escrow company, who do they work with? Because you want to make sure when you build that team, you're building a team that has worked together in the past, because then they know how each other functions and it makes things more efficient. So I started all of this in approximately November of 2021 is when I came up with this idea and started doing that research. I spent November and December. I put together spreadsheets of the teams that had worked together. I started reaching out and calling all of these companies and getting proposals from them on what it would look to put together one of these offerings, because it isn't cheap. It will cost you, potentially $100,000 to put one of these together, compared to a 506B or 506C, which may cost about $10,000. So you're at 10x the cost. And for me, I always want to know going in, what is my exposure? What is my risk? What is my cost? Because also putting this out there, this is money that I'm putting out there. This is my money. So I'm putting $100,000 into this. I want to make sure I have something good. In January, after doing all of this research, putting all the budgets together, putting everything together, I had my attorney start drafting the documents for the offering and putting everything together. And at this point in time, I'll briefly talk about who the team was. We had my attorney. We had a broker dealer who really is for compliance. So, and we'll get into that in a minute about how this process works. We had what's called a transfer agent, who is the one who actually, because you sell shares of a stock, who keeps track of kind of the cap table and the shares that you're issuing. We had an escrow company that would, when people invested, hold that money until it was released to us. They would also have to do the checks on people, anti-money laundering, to make sure that, we're not working with a Mexican drug lord, which, by the way, we did have somebody want to invest a significant amount of money and did not want to do it through our offering, wanted to do a little side deal with us. Then we Googled them, lo and behold, the person spent 15 years in prison, affiliated with some people you probably don't want to be affiliated with. Leave it at that. The biggest other component to this is the other two are the technology, is how do people invest? Because it is different than using other platforms where people can just go in and invest, because with the Regulation A, there's a lot more standards and rules that you have to follow. So you just can't, willy-nilly just use any type of platform, because if you tell them I'm doing a Regulation A, a lot of them will be like, ooh, stepping back. That was one. And the other is the marketing company. How are you going to market this to investors? And when you look at putting all these costs together, the marketing is going to be your biggest expense. So started compiling all of this in January, went back and forth with our attorney. And then in April of 2022, we submitted our first submission to the SEC. And let me just say, it was breathtaking and thrilling to, within 3 months of a ton of work, a ton of back and forth. I believe we had about 7 drafts between my attorney and I. We were ready to submit. We submit the offering, and time passes, and then we get our first response from the SEC. I believe it was like 6 weeks later, maybe, mid-May, and there were only 2 comments. And my attorney and I are like, wow, this is like Awesome. Only 2 comments. One of them was a softball, easy. The other was a, oh boy. And what we were trying to do, the oh boy, was we wanted to give benefit to the first $10 million of investors and give them better returns. And the SEC came back and said, no, that's not a continuous offering. It has to be equal for everybody because somebody may think they were getting in early and then they don't. How do you differentiate? So they basically told us, nope, can't do that. Okay, so not a big deal. We update it about 2 weeks later, resubmit, and about 2 weeks after that, we get comments. And the comments were not what we originally were talking about, but now they're new comments. And for anyone who has ever gone to Department of Motor Vehicles, and you got to get something done, and you get up to the desk, and they're like, "Okay, do you have the form?" No, I was told to submit this form. Well, no, you need this form. Okay, let me go fill this out or get back to you. And they're like, okay, come back to us when you have this form. And then you're like, is there anything else? Get me this form. So you come back to motor vehicles, and okay, here's the form. Okay, well, now do you have this? Well, you didn't tell me I needed this. Can I get a full list? And, the frustration I've always ran with is, once they get to the point of, well, we don't like this, then the entire time stops. And once it stops, it's like, okay, answer this before we can even continue. Instead of giving you here the 5 things you need to fix, it was kind of one at a time. That was the sense I was getting. Respond back to those comments. Answer those. 2 weeks later, like this tennis match where every 2 weeks, they would submit, they would give us comments. We would submit them the next day. 2 weeks later, we get more comments. So this went on for about 6 weeks until finally in mid-July, we got qualified. So we were able to get qualified under 3 months. This whole process took about 6 months to do. Today, I'm hearing it's taking much longer. I'm hearing people 9 months, 12 months to get through, these offerings and get them, to where they need to be. So what are some of the biggest lessons learned I have as going through this process? First is 100% no ifs, ands, or buts. You have to work with people who have done this in the past and have dealt with the SEC. From your broker-dealer, your attorney, your CPA, because you do have to provide an audit for them and provide information from them. Your transfer agent, who you want to make sure has worked with private companies, not just the public. And so let me give you an idea of, walk you through the process and where everyone steps in, because a lot of people like thinking probably right now, okay, too many people involved. Okay? So once you're qualified, you have a website people can go invest. That is your technology button. They will, I'm just going to say I'm an investor, and our offering has a minimum of $5,000. You go online and you click on that button to go invest. You have to fill out your forms online and click submit, along with, let's say you gave ACH data, pay by ACH. So who's involved in that process? One, the technology company, because they got the technology behind it to make sure it's secure, no one breaks through that firewall. 2 is the broker-dealer. How's the broker-dealer involved? The moment Chris Seveney submits that information, that broker-dealer will A, make sure the forms are completed, as well as do what's called an AML KYC check, anti-money laundering, know your customer check, in regards to making sure I'm not on any, government lists for, doing things with money that you shouldn't be. Then, after that's clear, the money will get transferred into the escrow company, who will hold that money, and they'll be communicating with the broker-dealer to make sure, did they get the thumbs up that we can release this money to the sponsor? Because they can't release it until after that AML KYC check is done. So for us, we typically close every month, meaning we take the money from escrow every month. So once we take that money from escrow, now somebody needs to know, okay, who invested and how much? So you can issue those shares. So we will create and work with between our escrow company and our transfer agent, say, here are the 50 people who invested. Each one invested $5,000 at $10 per share, $500. Now I need you to create their stock certificate. So basically they will create internally the investment and house that cap table. And they're the ones who hold all the shares for us. So when I go to redeem at a later date, I know who that company is and say, I want to redeem. That company would send me paperwork. I would fill it out, send it to them. They would go back to the sponsor and say, this person is redeeming. Once they receive their money, let us know and relinquish the shares. So a lot of moving parts involved in all of this. So as I mentioned, putting that team together that's worked through all of this and together, because you can see how many areas it can go wrong, especially when you're working with investors. And when you're working with investors, you need to communicate with them, but B, you also need to streamline these processes. So that's, the most important thing is working with those professionals. The second that I want to touch upon is doing your research. And for me, literally going through the SEC website, reviewing other offerings. And what I literally was doing was highlighting text from other offerings, saying, oh, I like this. How can I incorporate this? Or ask my attorney, I want to do something along these lines. Also, the risk. You have to, as part of this offering, put in 20 pages of a risk profile and analysis. How do you do that? You have to put all this together. So through a lot of these offerings, I was going through a lot of the risk and going through it and understanding, oh, well, this is a risk. I want to target this. This is a risk. I want to target this. So these are other things that I wanted to talk about as part of the putting everything together. So that was very beneficial of going through, reading all these offerings. And last is, what do others offer in regards to the terms? What is competitive to make sure I'm being competitive with my research? My competition that could potentially be out there. Because if others are offering X and you're offering 5% below X, what is going to get you to have investors want to invest with you? Last but not least, as part of that is simplicity. Trying to keep things as simple as possible. Because if you're not going to be simplistic, it makes it that much more challenging. People may not understand how to do that. So those are such important factors. And throughout this entire process, this whole 6-month time, you want to also consistently be educating yourself on what else is going on in that space. So I wanted to share with people today how we were able to launch our crowdfunding, our Regulation A+ offering in under 6 months. So if you're interested in understanding more about this process, I am happy to give you introductions to others who are in this space, from the broker dealers to transfer, you name it. I'm happy to provide you with any contacts. And one last thing before we end this episode is, as you grow and as you scale, realize, just like anything in business or in life, those who start with you long-term may not be who finish with you. You may outgrow certain vendors. And for us, we've gone through that. We outgrew or changed, pivoted in some aspects where we've swapped out some of our key team players. Probably the biggest and most important one is our accountant. And people are like, ooh, you switch your accountant? Well, yes, because when we started, we were using a smaller firm who was very good, did the audit because we were just a new company, not a ton of things on that audit, to now we're dealing, for us, we have a mortgage note debt fund and how do we, value our loans? How do we account for those loans? There's a ton of, IRS code on a lot of this stuff that, you need to understand, and you want to work with a CPA firm that understands that. So we switched, and now we're using, I think they're the 5th largest, CPA firm and auditing firm in the country. And I'll tell you, they are excellent to work with. And it's great to work with somebody like this because, they will also, because they have so much knowledge, give you so much more education back as well that you just can learn from them. So I want to close on that. So some key takeaways, again, rewinding everything is part of any type of crowdfunding campaign. First and foremost, need to put together a rockstar team. 2, you need to do all the research and understand what it is you want to offer within your offering, not anyone else. You can take advice from others on what you've seen, what they've seen, what may work, what may not work, but you have to digest all of that and put it so it's simplified, focused, and structured. And from that, you need to consistently look at, how everything is working, and there will be tweaks along the way. So hope you enjoyed this episode. On the next episode, I'm going to follow this up, and I'm going to talk about benefits that we've gained and rewards we've reaped from launching this Regulation A+ offering. So thank you for watching this episode of Creating Wealth Simplified. And as always, make sure to leave a review on your favorite listening station, and always feel free to reach out to us if there's a topic that you would like for us to present. I'm Chris Seveney. Take care, everybody. Enjoy. Thank you for joining Lauren and I on this episode of the Creating Wealth Simplified podcast. Each week, we bring you expert education, experience, and information in a digestible format to help you identify investment opportunities so you can build wealth through real estate and take action toward your financial goals. Enjoy the show, share with a friend, or subscribe to the show and leave us a review.